Joining me now is the Papal Posse, editor-in-chief of theCatholicThing.org, and visiting fellow at Thomas More College in New Hampshire, Robert Royal, here with me on set, properly distanced. And joining us also from New York is canon lawyer, priest of the Archdiocese of New York, Father GERALD MURRAY, and he's really socially distanced. Nice to have the posse all together again. I want to begin with this Francesco documentary about Pope Francis. It made global headlines because in the film, Francis calls for the passage of civil union laws for same-sex couples. Here's what he actually says in the documentary. We'll roll it for you. Homosexual people have the right to be in a family. They are children of God and have a right to a family. Nobody should be thrown out or be made miserable over it. What we have to have is a civil union law. That way, they are legally covered. Now, what the Pope says about homosexual people having a right to be in a family is not against church teaching, nor is it new. The Pope has often said that homosexual children should not be ostracized from their biological families. However, the media and activists have been saying the they have a right to a family line there is a shift in church teaching. Is it, Father Jerry?
No, because that was a manipulation of the Pope's words. He was not endorsing the formation of a family by adoption or surrogate motherhood in that regard. So that is not a change in church teaching. What is the change in church teaching is what he said about homosexual unions being recognized by civil law. Back in 2003, Pope John Paul II said the following: Catholics are obliged to oppose legal recognition of homosexual unions. Catholics are obliged, and the reason is it's an endorsement of deviant behavior, and it is giving societal recognition to something which is a fake marriage. It has nothing to do with marriage. And it gives the approval to behavior which is mortally sinful. So that is something which contradicts church teaching and is causing tremendous havoc. I've been reading about, Catholic homosexuals who live chaste lives, who resist temptations to commit this sin. They feel let down. They feel like they've been cast aside by the Pope. And on the other hand, the activists who want to legitimize homosexuality think this is great. This is a real crisis in the church, Raymond.
Well, Father referenced that 2003 document, and in it says, respect for homosexual persons cannot lead to any way to approval of homosexual behavior or legal recognition of homosexual unions. But Bob, some say the Pope's comments here that civil unions should be recognized legally is a change in the teaching, and that's a good thing. He's accompanying those other people in the church.
Well, I ask myself why this statement was even made at all. It was initially made in 2019. Even in the original statement, which was then edited out of the video in Mexico, I don't know why he made the statement back then. Now, for that to have been included, and Father is quite right that the Russian producer of this documentary manipulated the language to make it look much more radical than in fact it is. But still, why allow this to come out now? Now, maybe there's an intention behind this. I tend to resist these days an overly careful reading of the Pope as actually intending something, because there just seems to be a lot of chaos that swirls around him. But if it was intended that come out at this point, why exactly? We know what actually happens when civil unions are approved. It happened in Argentina when he was in favor of that as sort of a halfway house to avoid gay marriage.
Right.
Ultimately, the goal is gay marriage. And not only that, it's acceptance of transgenders and the affirmation of gay lifestyles. So this is not in any way, even from a prudential point of view, something that's effective. It not only affirms something that's sinful, but it doesn't even succeed politically.
Father Jerry, in an interview with CNN, Father James Martin, who has really been out front framing the Pope's comments, had this to say. Watch.
I think he's creating a new space for LGBT people. There is a 2003 document from the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith against same-sex unions, and the Pope is obviously saying he sees things a little differently. It's momentous because he's saying it as Pope. He said it before as Archbishop of Buenos Aires. He's saying it on the record, and he's being very clear. It's not simply he's tolerating it, he's supporting it.
Father Jerry, should we accept that at face value? What's he saying there?
Well, I think Father Martin, unfortunately, is accurate in his observation. The Pope has stated quite clearly that he thinks homosexual men or homosexual women have a right to some kind of legal recognition of their relationship in a way that's equivalent in some way to marriage without calling it marriage. And what the Pope has done here is something that no Pope has ever done, which is accept the gay lifestyle. The Pope seems to be at ease with homosexuals living together and committing sin. Because let's face it, the basis of homosexuals' civil unions is that they're going to be sexually active with each other, and they make promises to that effect. So, yeah, it's unfortunate, to say the least, that the Pope did this. I think it's really scandalous, and it's not a happy day when a Catholic priest has to say that the Pope has done something that he thinks is scandalous. But really, Holy Father is saying something that goes directly against Catholic moral teaching. Not only are we not supposed to commit mortal sin, we're not supposed to encourage other people to do it or speak in a way that would give them the impression that we tolerate it or think it's good. So this is not a good moment for the Catholic Church right now.
Several prelates, including Cardinal Raymond Burke, whom will join us later, and Archbishop Athanasius Schneider, have called on the Pope to retract his statements here. Do you think he will, Robert Royal?
No, because I think you're quite right with what you said before, that this is sort of the way he likes to accompany people. You know, in that statement that they have a right to exist in a family. I don't even believe that was a common expression among gay activists, and somehow now this thing has jumped out as a new right that exists in civil society. And he also talks about the right not to be made miserable in a family because you're a homosexual. The actual word they use in the Italian translation is infelice, unhappy. Well, this is a very sentimental approach to the moral life. There are lots of things that make us unhappy that we have to do as Christians, but we must follow Christ and follow the teachings of his church. So instead of putting the teaching first and then a kind of a pastoral accompanying people after that, what he's done is kind of raise the visibility of just this emotional niceness toward a group of people and neglected what is really his role as the Pope, which is to teach the brethren and sisters, to reaffirm us in what the faith teaches, and not only faith but also the morals, against a society that is all too ready to go to town the minute the Pope begins to appear squishy on these issues.
Father Jerry, there were protests this weekend in St. Peter's Square with laity asking the Pope to clarify these statements on same-sex unions. So far, the Vatican has seemingly embraced the film. They even gave the filmmaker an award. They refused to issue any comment. Is a statement of clarification needed, in your opinion?
Absolutely. In fact, we need a statement where the Pope is going to recant and take this back because, quite frankly, the Pope has overstepped his bounds. He has no right to endorse in any way immoral behavior. Sodomy is a sin. It's a mortal sin. Relationships that lead to sodomy are the near occasion of sin and must be resisted and not entered into. And the point of the laity is absolutely correct. We live in a society in which the pressure put on the Catholic Church to change her teaching about sexual morality is constant. And it seems very clear the Pope has given in on something that he has no right to give in on. When John Paul II and Benedict XVI confronted the homosexual culture and the legal pressures put on the Church, they did so in the name of the gospel. It's interesting to note that Protestant leaders, including Franklin Graham, are scandalized by what the Pope has done. They've come out against it. So I know that Cardinal Burke and Bishop Schneider have spoken eloquently on the matter. I hope the Pope will listen to them because this is not just something you can say, well, this happened and now we've got to move on. No, this is something that cannot change. Immorality cannot be approved, tolerated in this way, and given legal recognition at the behest of the Catholic Church. Imagine what happens when a homosexual pressure group now approaches bishops in Africa or Latin America and says, we want you to be in favor of civil unions and go to the government on our behalf. And by the way, that's what the Pope is telling you to do. This is going to cause a big upheaval.
Yeah, well, it already has. I mean, we have local bishops all over the United States and globally who are saying, well, we heard what the Holy Father said. I don't agree with this. I can't support this as a protector of the gospel. So in my diocese, we are going on as we were. Doesn't this create a disunity around something as central as marriage, morality? I mean, Where does it leave the church?
Yeah, I have to say again, I mean, why make this statement when most of the developed world is way, way already beyond the idea of civil unions? We're into gay marriage, transgender rights, and all these other things. You know, it's very ironic that some of the gay activists are saying he didn't go far enough, that his silence is actually a problem for them, because he leaves this, as he often has in the past, as we've spoken about on the show here. He does this, and he wants to see what kind of reaction occurs as a result. I want to say again, though, I wouldn't be surprised if we find that this came out in some kind of chaotic way that the Vatican wasn't necessarily involved in. There is not, it seems to me, a very disciplined approach to these issues. Yeah. The way that the press office has been, it seemed to be unaware of actually what had happened when this thing first came out. So it creates all kinds of confusion. And right now, as a woman wrote to me immediately when she saw this happen, she said, the church doesn't need more ambiguity and confusion right now. We are fighting enough with the secular world. This chaos amongst ourselves can only benefit people who don't have the best interests of the church.
And as you mentioned earlier, I have read reports where this interview with the Mexican reporter, the Vatican edited this piece out of the interview, but for whatever reason, they gave this filmmaker carte blanche access to the archive with the unedited bits. And it has created a controversy where you didn't need one. But we'll return to this later and see where it ends. This past weekend, Pope Francis announced a consistory on November 28th. That is the creation of 13 new cardinals. Among those to be raised to the cardinalatial see, or to the College of Cardinals, is Archbishop Wilton Gregory, who becomes the first black cardinal in the United States. What do you make of Archbishop Gregory's appointment to cardinal so soon after taking the Archdiocese of Washington? Father Jerry, and what are we to read into this?
No, I think this is good and normal, and in fact a recognition of black Catholics in the United States and their importance to the life of the church. Washington's our capital, and Archbishop, now Cardinal designate Gregory, is one of the leading figures in the Catholic Church in the United States. So, I've studied black Catholic history. It is a marvelous development over time, people who suffered under prejudice and segregation and persevered in their faith. And I think it's very good. We always try to encourage young black men to consider the priesthood. I hope that will be one of the results of this. What I will say is that some of the other nominations were a little surprising. People who you would never expect to be named cardinal were named, and others who you would be expecting to be named, such as the Archbishop of Los Angeles or the Archbishop of Paris, were not named. So things are not as they were under the previous popes, where archbishops of major sees almost automatically become cardinals. And I think, that's a little bit problematic because the system is kind of not clear where it's leading.
Of the 13 new cardinals, 9 are under the age of 80, which means they would be eligible to elect Francis's successor. With these new appointments, Pope Francis has appointed 76 of the 128 cardinals who will be voting in that next conclave. Robert Royal, what does this tell you about the future direction of the Church? With these 8 appointments, he has exceeded the 120 limit for the cardinals. Your thoughts?
Yeah. Look, it's a little bit hard to read this. I agree with Father. It's surprising that, for example, Archbishop Gomez in LA, a huge archdiocese, a Hispanic leader in the United States, president of the Bishops' Conference, very much in line with the Pope on immigration. He's been a very strong advocate of immigration. But he's also an Opus Dei member, and probably considered by some of the people who have the Pope's ear to be more traditional than maybe Francis would like. I think that this is quite regrettable. That we've had similar things like this. Archbishop Chaput was never named a cardinal, and clearly deserved it because of his leadership in the church here in the United States. In terms of the appointments that he's made around the world, he's really tried to go to, as he says, the peripheries. So 4 of the appointments are from Rwanda, Chile, Brunei, countries like this that aren't exactly central to figuring out where the church is going in the future. And we don't know these people. I don't think the other cardinals know these people very well. So it may be that there is some kind of ideological or ecclesiological component to this, but it's a mixed picture. And I think that we could say, though, overall, that these appointments from the peripheries are not going to be sympathetic, say, to the idea of civil unions, as you were saying earlier. So We'll see how this plays out. I don't think we can say ahead of time until we see the next conclave.
Yeah, I think the ideological framing of this may be off because by going to the peripheries, Father Jerry, the Pope is also bringing in people and experiences and cultures that, frankly, I don't think the Vatican fully comprehends or understands.
Well, certainly the African cardinal from Rwanda, you know, his family, almost all the members were killed in the terrible war that occurred there. The new cardinal coming from Brunei is living in a majority Muslim country, and his experience of living the faith there will be certainly something to learn from. It's interesting. The Pope also named honorary cardinals, meaning cardinals over the age of 80, to recognize them, and that continues a tradition of John Paul II. I think the point, though, that bears saying is that the College of Cardinals has not met. I think it's now going on 5 years. They have not gotten together as a group, and that's the Pope's call. He's the one that calls them together. So therefore, I don't think they know each other too well, and that doesn't bode well for discussions about, you know, who would be known and appreciated as candidates for the next conclave. That's remediable in the immediate, different meetings that can take place, but I think it would be important that the Pope reconsider this policy of not having meetings of the college entirely in Rome. That should start again.
No, it's going to create a very difficult conclave because these people are coming from the peripheries of the church and really don't have experience with working with these other cardinals or even connections to Rome. Will make it very difficult. And to pick up on what you were saying, Bob, the oversight of Archbishop Gomez, who could be a major Hispanic cardinal in America, which has the largest Hispanic minority that's the largest minority in the country, that seems a missed opportunity. I mean, we're making a great deal over Archbishop Gregory, primarily not because of his policies or his track record, but because of his race. I don't know why we're not also expending the same focus and energy on Archbishop Gomez, but I guess that can be cured in time. The election is less than a week away. I have to get into some of this tussle we're seeing. Amy Coney Barrett, now Justice Barrett, was sworn in as an Associate Supreme Court Justice on Monday night. I attended that incredible swearing-in event. Do you think that her appointment has an impact on the Catholic vote at all? Robert Royal, quickly.
Well, I would like to think so, because I think the Catholics have got to understand that their public witness depends on there being people who at least follow the faith enough that they don't act against it. And she, you know, mom of 7 kids, you know, 2 black kids, utterly brilliant, a woman, you know, all these things coming together. I would hope that Catholics would be inspired by that fact.
Yeah.
Whether it will cause them to vote for the president in greater numbers, maybe slightly so, but at this point I have a feeling that opinions are pretty much settled. Maybe just around the edges this may have some effect, but listen, it's a great thing.
Father Jerry, I mean, you saw the flip in support for her nomination. At the beginning, you had all these people who were against moving the nomination forward. By the time she had gone through her hearings, a majority supported her nomination because she is so impressive, and a New Orleans Catholic girl, I might add. Your thoughts on this and the impact she might have and that whole process might have on this election?
Well, a couple of things. One is, what was the first issue that was brought up by her opponents? It was abortion.
Yeah.
No Democrat voted for her, sad to say. She is the ideal exponent of what we try to promote in a society in which men and women are treated equally. Is she has a brilliant career and she has a beautiful family, and she's combined them so well. I think the grace and brilliance that she showed at the hearings inspires people because quite frankly, the Supreme Court has been the cause of much mischief and horrendous decisions. And having someone like her on the court, I think now we're going to have good decisions and orderly legal proceedings. And, you know, elections, well, that's up to the voters. But it's very upsetting to see no Democrat come out and say that this woman deserves to be part of the Supreme Court because of her qualities and beautiful family and all the rest, but that this abortion domination in the Democratic Party is a disservice to the American people. Abortion is not something that was ever voted on by the American people, and To keep it at the level of the Supreme Court, no. The Supreme Court should send it back to the states and let the people vote on it.
No, we shall see in time. Both presidential candidates have been targeting the Catholic vote. I want to play this for you. This is a pastor in Bay St. Louis, Mississippi, Father Michael O'Connor. It's a recent homily where he talked about Joe Biden touting his Catholicism in this campaign year. Watch.
Joe Biden embraces teachings that are absolutely and fundamentally opposed to the priorities of our church to protect life, to protect the sanctity and the holiness of marriage. He is, in some respects, an embarrassment to Catholicism. He is pro-abortion for any reason or for no reason at all. There is an amendment that is written to protect your federal tax dollars, the money that you give to Caesar, that protects that money from paying directly for abortion. It's called the Hyde Amendment. Joe Biden actively wants to repeal that amendment.
I'll get into this further with Cardinal Burke in our next segment, but what do you both make of the way Biden has used his Catholicism and put it front and center throughout this campaign? Will Catholics simply ignore the record and say, well, he's a nice man and he prays the rosary every now and then? Is that enough?
Unfortunately, I think for a lot of people it is enough, but it's utterly preposterous. I mean, what he's done, not only what he says, but he's even said things like trans rights are the civil rights issue of our time. I mean, this is going way beyond abortion. He wraps himself in the Affordable Care Act as if Trump is reelected, somehow health care in the United States will vanish. It's an utter lie, by the way, that pre-existing conditions will not be allowed in the insurance and whatnot. But it's preposterous, and I think that we should have had more priests like this speaking out. We should have had more bishops speaking out about this. You don't have to endorse or tell people how to vote,
right,
but you can say the truth about what it is that the church teaches. It's important, especially at moments like this, when you have a Catholic candidate running for president of the United States who is so opposed to the church on so many different issues. Look, you can say till you're blue in the face that he's going to help the poor and whatnot. Yeah, that's further down the line. Trump actually helped a lot of the poor by having an economy that got people back to work. And our Holy Father has said giving people a job is actually more important than these relief efforts. But no, we have not had in our church leadership enough people stand up to just make the obvious point that this man says and does things that are going to be disastrous for the church. I mean, we will not see the end of the persecution of the Little Sisters of the Poor, and on and on and on. So, look, if we just told the truth as a church about where he is, I think a lot of people might have had some different thoughts and feelings about him prior to this.
Father Jerry, if Joe Biden does pull this out, what will it mean to have a Catholic in the White House who truly contradicts basic teachings of the church?
This will be a source of continual conflict with the Catholic Church and will cause immense scandal to non-Catholics because here is a man, who is a Catholic and claims to, be a faithful Catholic, but is absolutely contradicting what a faithful Catholic has to do. So if he's elected, we're going to have a number of issues. When he attends public Mass, should he be given Holy Communion? The answer is no. He is contradicting the Church's teaching of something very serious and grave. As we discussed a few weeks ago, abortion is not just an issue. Abortion is the preeminent human rights challenge of our age, and it is so momentously wrong for a Catholic candidate for president treat it as just another issue that he's going to take a different position on. No, this is ridiculous. It's pathetic for him to say, nuns inspire me, and then say, well, the Little Sisters of the Poor have to give out abortifacients and contraception to their employees. That's not consistent. So, I wish everybody well, in the sense I want everybody to follow Christ and to do, the will of God. But when someone is manifestly contradicting that, we can't just sit there silently and smile. Mr. Biden has an obligation to follow what he says he believes in, and so far he's not done that in public. It's really terrible.
Well, I'll just make this statement because I've been thinking about this a lot, covering both of these campaigns, Biden and Trump, and I've been to both their events. If Biden does win the Catholic vote, it is, to my mind, another sign that the church itself, in America at least, is shattered. And frankly, that Catholics are not bound by even basic teachings once considered important for us to hold as a people. And in many ways, it will be the exaltation and the coronation of dissent with a professed Catholic president who legislates in opposition to the stated doctrines of his own communion. But that's on the church for not holding he and other Catholics accountable. And I think there will be a day of reckoning, as you mentioned a moment ago, Bob, for the bishops, for the priests who sat back and did nothing. Lockdowns are coming. And one of the big issues, I think, in this election, maybe people haven't focused on it yet, but to my eye, it is going to be the perpetual lockdown of churches and religious activity in the United States. You can go to the casino now, you can hit Costco, we can get all the booze you want, and drugs apparently. Go to the marijuana dispensaries in some states. You may not go to Mass. You may not go to church or gather with more than 5 or 6 or 10 of your congregants. Have we focused sufficiently on that and the promise of each of these candidates vis-a-vis locking down, particularly religious practice, owing to COVID? Using COVID as an excuse, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's defining religion as inessential in
right.
fact, right?
Right, it's a throwaway.
Yeah, the other things are essential. Going to the supermarket is essential and whatnot. And this is the manifestation of materialism in society, as if our bodily existence is more important than our spiritual existence. There's no recognition that the spirit, that our moral values, that the need to worship God is an important part of what it means to be a human being. We're a country that's founded on the idea that we've been endowed by our Creator with our rights. And that was the fundamental difference of the United States from all other modern democracies. Others rebelled against Christianity, against religion, and wanted to secularize. We're firmly rooted in the idea that God is the one that gives us this wonderful free system that we exist in, and we're now declaring him to be inessential.
Yeah. Father Jerry, I'm going to give you the last word. I am struck by the palpable fear that is being peddled this election season. Fear of COVID, fear of economic ruin. And it's all, it seems everybody's in their little cave hiding out. Your thoughts on that and how it might or might not affect the outcome of this election and the practice of Catholics going forward in Catholicism?
Well, let me, we referred to Archbishop Gregory and, honoring black Catholics. I'm absolutely disgusted when I hear people calling President Trump a racist. President Trump is not a racist. This is a tactic that's being used precisely to generate fear, to try and drive black voters away from him. What's going on here? This kind of sloganeering, which is not based in reality. Why is it, for instance, when there's riots going on in all over the United States in different places, certain people say nothing, and when President Trump says we got to have law and order, they call him a racist? Black people and Hispanics who live in poor neighborhoods which are being ravaged, and that's a fact, that's not a prejudice, that's a fact to say that, they want the police to stop this. I'm horrified by this, certain places like my own city here in New York where politicians stand by when there's all this mayhem going on. Law and order is not racist, and this is something that I think has caused a lot of fear in people. They have to recognize that.
Yeah. Well, we shall leave it there. Posse, thank you both. You can find commentary by Robert Royal and Father Gerald Murray at thecatholicthing.org. And Columbus and the Crisis of the West by Robert Royal is available at bookstores everywhere and at the EWTN Religious Catalog. Thank you both. We'll check in after the election. And I want to give you a little taste of what we're hearing on the trail. Both candidates are invoking God. I call it God talk. Watch.
The Bible tells us there's a time to break down and a time to build up, a time to heal. This is that time.
In America, we celebrate faith. We cherish religion. We lift our voices in prayer, and we raise our sights to the glory of God.
In this country, civil society, and especially our religious institutions, are an essential foundation of American freedom. Our nation is strong because of Catholics and, frankly, people of all faiths. Somebody said to me the other day, "You're the most famous person in the world by far." I said, "No, I'm not. No, I'm not." They said, "Yes, you are." I said, "No." They said, "Who's more famous?" I said, "Jesus Christ."